Welcome to day 4 of the 28-day photo challenge. Today we're looking at motion photography. Now the biggest thing for motion photography is you want to have a shutter speed that corresponds to what you're shooting while still providing motion. If it's going to be too slow, you're going to have a blurry photo, and if it's too fast, you're going to have something that looks like it's standing still. So today we're going to try and find the happy medium in between that to still show motion in a still photo.
So we're out here at the property right now, and I'm going to take the camera out of the rig so that way we can isolate the camera itself so it's as light as possible. When capturing motion, you want to have a somewhat fast shutter speed so that way you're not getting any kind of blur on the subject that you're taking a picture of. However, you do want some motion blur in the background so that way you can still capture the motion so the subject that you're taking a picture of is still and in frame, but the background is blurry. So you have to kind of find a middle ground for that. One of the easiest things you can do for this is obviously turn on autofocus. It just takes one element out of what you actually have to do and what you have to focus on. Next, you're going to put the camera on the automatic shutter, so that way it's just going to continuously take pictures. So by going to manual, now we can set the shutter speed to whatever we want. Now, a good rule of thumb of where to start is by taking your zoom range. So this camera here is a micro four thirds, which is a 2x crop. So right now we're at 12 millimeter, but because it's a 2x crop, that's equivalent to a 24 millimeter full frame. So now when we're looking at the shutter speed, we're at 60. So we want to double that. So right now 50 is a good starting point for what we're going to be shooting. Now the reason you use this is because if we zoom in to say 25, now it's a lot more narrow. The speed of the shutter doesn't have as much that it needs to focus on, so we can actually raise this up to about 100. Right now, there's very minimal motion between the steering wheel and the camera, so if we were to shoot wide at 24, and then bring the shutter speed down to 50, now we have a lot of motion blur between the camera and the closer subject because we're so wide, but really far away, everything is moving extremely fast. So we can get away with raising the shutter speed and then zooming in to compensate because now we're looking at subjects that are significantly further away. Like if we look at the pole on the end of that fence toward the trees, on the camera, we're only moving the end of the lens about half an inch to get between those two spaces. But in reality, the picture itself is actually moving about 15-20 feet. So that's why with a faster shutter speed, we can get motion blur from things that are further away. However, for this instance here, I'm going to be shooting at 12 millimeter, so that's 24. I'm going to bring that back down to 50 because I'm going to be doing something that's a little bit unorthodox because it's only me here right now trying to get all of this done. Now, unfortunately, I am using the Windows phone right now because I accidentally bricked my S21 Ultra. Technically, it's a soft brick, so I'll have it back in some of these videos because I do need an Android phone for at least one of them. And not like anyone cares, but basically Samsung released a baseband update and you cannot downgrade from those. And I was trying to downgrade for a video on the tech channel showing you how to downgrade your phone if you didn't want to upgrade. But because it updated to the latest baseband, like behind the scenes and I didn't know, I tried to downgrade it and it bricked the phone. So to fix that, you just have to flash the latest firmware. But because it was only an over-the-air update, there's no actual full firmware file that I can flash on the phone to recover it. So right now it's bricked until Samsung releases a firmware update that has the new baseband in it. So right now I'm using the Windows phone. It's a phone, it takes pictures, whatever, but I don't have the DJI app, which is the reason I was trying to downgrade because the DJI app for the Mavic Pro does not work on Android 12. So that means that I have to fly the drone using remote control rather than using the app. I need to get the drone in the air, use one hand to move the drone forward so that way it can fly past me, and then I'll use the other hand to try and get a picture of the drone as it's flying by while keeping the drone sharp in the frame, but keeping the background blurry so that way we can capture the motion of the drone. Now this would be significantly easier with someone else, or if you're taking pictures of cars, sporting events, anything that has high motion that you want to capture that to show the speed and motion of what you're actually shooting. Another good example of this is birds. And I actually caught a pretty cool picture of a bird in Las Vegas that I'll throw up right now, so at least you can see what I'm trying to achieve. So now we got to get the drone in the air, and I got to try and not crash it while taking a picture. So hopefully this works. Okay, this feels really weird without a phone in there. I've never actually done this before, so the chance of actually crashing this is very high. Well, short story long, we can't use the drone because it's in a no-fly zone, even though this is private property and Like, look how big the trees are. There's a cell phone tower and everything, and I'm still not allowed to fly because it's in a no-fly zone. That's gotta be one of the best parts about living in a small city, is that the entire city is a no-fly zone because of the distance from the airport. And then on the other side of the city, there's 2 helipads and another launch site for float planes. So I can't be anywhere within the city. So that's not happening. Because at least with the app, there's a bypass, so I can acknowledge that I'm in a no-fly zone, and then it'll just limit the height, so that way I'm not going high enough that it's going to interfere with any, like, aircraft or anything, right? You know, fly it responsible. Well, apparently with this, you can't launch at all, like nothing. You have to register the drone, and you have to take, like, an aviation test thing or whatever to get your license. Like, I can't even fly this stupid thing on my own property within an acceptable height because of the Canadian laws. Like, look at how far away that plane is. And even if I was going as high as the trees, if there's a plane anywhere close to that, they're in more trouble than I am because they're likely crashing. I don't know. This sucks. Maybe I can get the picture with, like, a snowball or something. I'll just throw it up and then I'll try and get a picture of it coming back down. So now that we're actually out here, and I want to keep the shutter speed around 1/50th of a second, if you take a sample picture, it's way too bright. It's going to be super blown out. So I have to adjust the aperture to compensate for that. So we're going to have to raise the aperture up to like f8. Yeah, that'll work. Now I just got to throw this up and then hopefully get the background to be blurry with it. Let's see what we got. So we actually did get a shot of the snowball. We got it in focus, and everything else is blurry. Is it a great shot? No, definitely not. But we got a shot, so at least I demonstrated it, I guess. Plus, there's the shot of the bird from Vegas, so I mean, you kind of have like a good example of what to look for. It's definitely a fun skill to have. You can get some pretty good pictures if you know how to utilize it, but it does take a lot of practice to actually get set up properly. Clearly, this is not a good environment because I don't have anything that's naturally moving, so I have to do both parts. I couldn't get the drone running because of Canadian laws, so that sucks, but hopefully you got something out of this. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't, that's cool, or don't do any of it. I'm not telling you what to do.